What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button because that is the most important thing you can do for me on this channel. What it does is that it helps to make sure that those who are subscribed to the channel will indeed get the notifications, and it also helps to push this video through the YouTube algorithm as well. Secondly, if you're new to the channel or maybe you've been ghost watching this channel for quite some time now, please do me a favor and yourself a favor by hitting the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you get notified whenever I release a new video. And lastly, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms as well to inform your family and friends of this news and information. And that also does help to give me a slight boost in the YouTube algorithm as well. And with the introduction out of the way, let's now get into today's news. And today we are headed back to my favorite city, my home city, Chicago. Why is that? Because it is raining money for Biden's migrants once again. And whenever money starts falling out of the sky for Biden's migrants, especially in Chicago, you know I'm going to talk about it. So what I want to do right now is get into it because so far to date for 2024, Brandon Johnson and JB Pritzker have secured $471 million for Biden's migrants. $471 million in 2024. Now, out of that $471 million, $70 million of it, it still needs to be voted on. It still needs to be voted on in city council. And it was supposed to be voted on today, but it was delayed. But that vote should be picked back up this Friday. And if not this Friday, then sometime next week. Let's be real. This delay doesn't mean anything. It is Chicago. And at the end of the day, they're going to approve this as they always do. So now what I want to do is get into this article very quickly. And then I have another bit of information that I think you'll find even more interesting than this once we get through this article. But let's get to the money first, because once again, in Chicago, as usual, it is raining hundreds of millions of dollars down on Biden's migrants. The city council on Wednesday delayed a final vote on Mayor Brandon Johnson's request for another $70 million in funding to provide shelter and other services to thousands of asylum seekers in Chicago. The city council budget committee approved the funding request on Monday on a 20-8 vote, setting it up for final approval on Wednesday. The city already has budgeted $150 million to care for Biden's migrants this year. I repeat, the city has already budgeted. Brandon Johnson already budgeted $150 million for Biden's migrants. But the mayor's office has acknowledged that that won't be enough for the entire year. Chicago is so corrupt, it's not even funny how wildly corrupt the city is, but I digress. The request for $70 million more is part of the original spending plan Governor JB Pritzker's office said was discussed back in February when the governor and Cook County Board President Tony Prickwinkle announced they would invest a combined $250 million to help fund the migrant mission, which they said, along with Johnson's administration, anticipated would cost $321 million for shelter and services this calendar year. So now in between the state and the county's $250 million, combined with the $150 million that was already budgeted by Brandon Johnson, and you place on top of that the additional $70 million, we're looking at a grand total of $470 million. $470 million this year for Biden's migrants. It is amazing how they are always able to pull money out of the sky for Biden's migrants. But when it comes to the citizens of Chicago, it's not so simple. When it comes to the citizens of Chicago, we don't really have the money. But when it comes to Biden's migrants, almost $500 million, we got that. We got that. No problem at all. Now what I want to do is shift over. I want to shift over to something that, or I should say a story that I actually believe is, I shouldn't say more important, but equally as important as what we're discussing here right now concerning the almost $500 million that's going to be dedicated to Biden's migrants this year in Chicago. This story here is something that has been brewing in the city for the past couple weeks now. Ray Lopez, who is an alderman in Chicago, has been pounding the pavement on this, and he's been speaking on the fact that in Chicago, migrant children are not required to go to school. They're not required that. These children that have crossed the border illegally with their alleged parents, right? Alleged, because we don't really know if those are their parents or not, but with their alleged parents, they're not required to do that. But the citizen children of Chicago are. Now, we all know that when it comes to that's a hot button issue. 2020 aside, this in general has always been a hot button issue. Some people are for it. Some people are against it. Some people, they pick and choose. I think that this version of is necessary for X, Y, and Z, but other are not necessary, right? I'm in that boat, right? When it comes to my son, there are some that he did receive. There are some that I said no. And when it came to that 2020, the answer was definitely no. I definitely didn't give my son that 2020. But that aside, let's get into this news clip concerning what Ray Lopez has to say about this when he did a quick interview on Fox News. I believe it was a couple days ago. So let me stop talking and let me get into what Ray Lopez has to say. And throughout the duration of the video, which is about a little over 2 minutes long, you're going to hear the audio drop out 2 times. In both instances, when the audio drops out, that's because he said the word. And we all know how YouTube can be about that, especially when you're talking about smaller YouTube channels like mine. So let's get into it.
So Chicago health officials confirming a, quote, small number of tuberculosis cases in migrant shelters across the city. But they're not saying how many. This comes after 56 known measles cases are reported in the Windy City. Chicago Alderman Raymond Lopez has warned about this issue for months, and he joins us now. So, Raymond, you warned them that this was going to happen, but they didn't listen to you. Are they listening now?
Lawrence, good morning. I don't know how much our Department of Public Health or other officials are listening to the alarms that we've been raising since August of last year, and even in September when we had receipts from our ambulances showing that we had individuals testing positive for tuberculosis. This is a crisis we could have avoided, just like with the measles, if we had simply instituted the American standard of vaccines upon all of those migrants being shipped to the city of Chicago. Many of these individuals come with children, they are in our schools, and all of those requirements that our kids are responsible for are waived for the migrant asylum seeker children.
And that is crazy. You see, when I sit up here, and a lot of other people say this too, it's not just me, but when I sit up here and I say that Biden's migrants on so many levels have more rights than American citizens, I'm not lying. It's not gaslighting. I'm not trying to be funny or facetious or anything of that nature. It's just the fact of the matter. How is it possible that your children, the citizen population of Chicago, your children they have to get that stuff, but migrant children have a choice? Why don't American citizens have a choice? Why don't the citizens of Chicago have a choice on whether or not they want their child to get some sort of medicine before they enter school? But Biden's migrants don't. That doesn't even make any sense. It should be automatic that your child is immediately going to get some medicine before he goes into school, because that's just the rules. But apparently the rules don't apply to Biden's migrants, but they do apply to the citizens of Chicago.
And that is putting people, families, and communities at risk.
Raymond, I've been so perplexed because, I've been out there reporting, talking with the folks. They're upset. I know your district, and the people there are minorities. You got immigrants there as well. But it seems like the mayor has tried to paint those that are critical of this sanctuary city policy and not having a response to the people there as anti-immigrant.
Without question, we have seen where efforts by this administration to put migrants on a toxic dump site were labeled as racist when people like myself and community opposed it, saying it wasn't healthy for them or for the neighborhood to have all of that dust kicked up. Even when I brought this issue about tuberculosis, measles, and mumps to the forefront, I've been told that I'm anti-immigrant and xenophobic, even though I'm the great-grandson of immigrants. So
look at how they place that on any and everybody who just either tells the truth or ask for common sense changes like, hey, Biden's migrants, their children, their alleged children, should be required to and forced to, as the citizen population is, they should be forced to get before their children enter school. Apparently that's being xenophobic. Apparently that's being anti-immigrant to say that they should receive medicine before entering school the same way our children have to receive medicine before entering schools. They place that label of anti-immigrant on anybody, even the great grandchild of an immigrant who was a clearly Hispanic man by the name of Raymond Lopez. But then again, Brandon Johnson is just a do boy of the DNC, and he's following instructions, doing what he's told.
So they could gaslight all they want, but at a certain point, the truth is going to come out, and we're seeing it come out slowly and steadily now, as we saw with the measles and as we're seeing now with tuberculosis.
Real quickly, because I only got 15 seconds, Raymond, do you think people in Chicago, because of this issue, because I haven't seen people at these city council meetings like this in a long time, do you think they're going to start voting differently just based on this issue alone?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, Americans are fed up with seeing themselves being leapfrogged over by those coming to this country just to get service and support. And I think that at some point, this is going to drive a wedge, particularly for the Democratic Party, my party, with our core base of African American and Latino voters who feel as though we have not invested in them the way we're investing in these migrant asylum seekers.
As I've stated over and over again, I have to see it to believe it. I have to see it to believe it. There's been a lot of online chatter about Chicago turning red, or red wave hitting Chicago. We're going to turn Chicago red. I have to see it to believe it. I got to see it to believe it, because I think, and I hate to say it, but I think many of us feel the same way. I'm pretty sure that as of this moment right now, for as much as people despise Brandon Johnson, if he ran for mayor again, if a special election was held right now and he had to rerun against somebody else, unless it was against Paul Valles or something like that, Brandon Johnson would probably win again. As ridiculous as that sounds. And I only say that because that's just what the patterns have shown throughout the years. I mean, this is, as people like to say in the comment section, this is what you voted for. And, for as annoying as that comment may seem to many people, when they hear it, unfortunately, it's the truth. Unfortunately, it's the truth. So whether or not the citizens of Chicago will vote differently is yet to be seen. I hope so, but once again, it's yet to be seen. Until then, this is what you have to deal with. And with all that being said, that does it for today's news. So I want to thank you all for watching today. Hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and make sure you follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram will be in the description box below, as well as pinned in the comment section as well. And also don't forget, lastly, to share this video out on your social media platforms. Thank you for your time. And until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.